Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome along to AFTV News Daily, the early edition. I hope you guys are all well today. Sun's shining in the UK, feeling good about it. It's the weekend, and things slowly, very slowly, but surely starting to get back to an semblance of where we used to be. Starting from tomorrow, there's going to be some schools going back, I think. There's also talk of relaxing some of the social distancing. I saw that reported yesterday that they might move it from 2 meters to 1.5 meters apart. You can meet with 6 people over here in the UK as long as you're socially distant. So it's very slowly starting to ease. And also the government coming out yesterday and saying that from tomorrow, from Monday, all sport, all professional sport and competitive sport in the UK is going to be allowed, right? So that's a real big step. I mean, obviously we've been focusing on football, but basically they're saying all sport going to be allowed from tomorrow, all competitive sport. Obviously, the same sort of measures as what's been happening in football is going to have to take place behind closed doors if it's a big professional team. You know, all the various measures that we see the footballers taking, the other sports are going to have to take as well. But I think that is a good sign. And they've carried out, I was just checking it today, 3,882 coronavirus tests in the Premier League. And they've only had 12 positive tests return. So again, I always say we don't want to see any positive tests. That's the ideal world, obviously. But in the grand scheme of things, 12 positive tests out of 3,882, that's not bad. You know what I mean? That shows that it is decreasing. And obviously, it's not as serious a threat as it was a couple of months ago. Obviously, the measures still have to be taken to make sure we maintain and contain this deadly virus. But it does seem like we are taking tiny little steps in the right direction. And also, I mean, obviously games being played behind closed doors. There were more yesterday in the Bundesliga. Bayern again, marching on to the title. Bet they're glad that it got resumed and it's all been done in the right way, with a big 5-0 win over there. But interestingly, I was reading, could football return with fans, not behind closed doors, before the end of this season, and that being in the FA Cup? Now, me and DT was talking about it on the podcast on Friday, and we were saying, the FA Cup final with no fans, that'll be the weirdest thing, in Wembley, with nobody there. You'd be like, that's mad, But there is talk that we could see an FA Cup final at Wembley with fans. Now, the proposal is that they'd allow 20,000 fans in. That's 10,000 fans from each team. Obviously, it's a huge stadium that can hold 80,000, going on 90,000 fans, right? So it would still be a pretty empty place, but at least there would be some fans of the clubs in there. So I was thinking about it. I was like, you know what? When they have the FA Cup final, the fans only normally get from each side, normally get about 20,000 anyway. You know what I mean? It's, so there wouldn't be much of a difference, but I'm only joking there. But 10,000 fans would be allowed from each team into the stadium. Now, this, of course, is only if the infection rate continues to drop. Now, what they're proposing is they'd have these amount of fans if the infection rate drops below 0.5. Currently, the infection rate's anywhere between 0.7 and 1. That's where we are at the moment. If it can drop to 0.5, and remembering that the FA Cup final is probably a couple of months away from being played, they are considering letting fans into the stadium to watch it. And I said 10,000 from each team. And I think that would be quite significant if they were able to do that, because then that starts to, you start to think to yourself, well, for the coming season, next season in the Premier League, could they then start to do a similar thing where they slowly allow fans back in, but a small amount of fans to begin with, building it up as the infection rate drops lower and lower. Of course, this is all dependent upon the infection rate going down. The infection rate has to go down for these measures to come in, but they are thinking about it. And I think it's a good thing. We want to see football return with fans, but it has to be safe. That has to be the number one priority, is people's safety. But if that infection rate's dropping, it's good to see that they are thinking about how do we get fans back into the stadium. And I think that is a very sensible thing to do. Lucas Torreira posted a picture yesterday on his Twitter. He's looking cut there, man. Look at that. I mean, obviously he's been out injured for a while. He got that injury in March, but he says in his post he's ready to play, and he looks like Hercules there. You know what I mean? A mini Hercules. He's ready. He's cut. So it's good that he's ready to jump back into action. Not sure if he's training yet with a full squad. I don't think so, but he hopefully will be soon. And also, he did an interview recently where he was talking about his love of Boca Juniors over there in Argentina, and how he would like to play for them one day. I mean, he's from Uruguay, but he was talking about in the article how, you know, in Uruguay they watch a lot of Argentinian football, and he's a big fan of Boca Juniors. He went to the final in Madrid when they played against River Plate. So he said in the future he'd like to play for Boca Juniors, but right now he's focused on his career in Europe. I noticed he said in Europe. I would rather have him have said at Arsenal. But listen, it's good that he posted that picture and that he's ready to go. And the quicker we can get him back into the team, fully fit, fully functioning, you know, the better. Because I do think he's a really talented player. We just don't get to see enough of him. Then there's David Luiz. Of course, this story broke a few days ago about how he's only got, you know, he's got this contract at the moment, £8 million. We signed him for, and we thought it was a 2-year deal, but it turns out it's a 1-year deal with an option for another year at the end of this season, which of course will be when we fulfill the rest of the games. A lot of talk today that Arsenal are considering an extension, but they want him to take a pay cut. He's on £120,000 a week at the moment, of course. So they'd want him to take quite a significant pay cut, but put some sort of incentive package in there that would, you know, probably build it back up to that amount, the 120 grand, if he achieves certain targets, if the team achieves certain targets. So we'll have to wait and see. I don't think this one's going to get sorted out until the end of the season. Also, what was really interesting was looking at how his original deal was structured. Now, we paid £8 million for him, but apparently the rumor is that we paid another £6 million in agents' fees. That is unbelievable, right? So in reality, it cost £14 million to get it done. And then we paid him about another, or going to pay him about another £10 million in wages. So works out to be about 24 mil for that deal. I mean, listen, wages is always a massive part of deals that we don't talk about in the original fees. So it's a bit mischievous to mention that. But £6 million in agents' fees. I think this is one of the reasons why in the past, when Arsene Wenger and Gazidis was there, they never liked dealing with certain agents because they didn't want to pay those big fees. The unfortunate thing is, though, if you want to get some of the real top quality players, they're with these big agents. And there's not many ways around it unless you pay these sort of fees. But really interesting how that deal is panning out. And we'll have to wait. I think it's going to be quite significant how he performs from now till the end of the season. If he does really, really well, I'm sure every Arsenal fan is going to be saying, listen, we need to keep him for another year, give him a new deal. If he doesn't, I'm sure they'll move him on. Arsenal linked today with a player from Juventus. Yet again, Juventus seem to have so many players. This guy, Federico Bernardeschi, right? He's a 26-year-old attacking midfielder who plays at Juventus. How many midfielders have they got? They have got, like, they just seem to buy anybody, and it doesn't matter whether they just park him up or whatever. And this guy, he's hardly played this season. I think about 5 games, scored 1 goal. But they did pay a lot of money for him. When they bought him from Fiorentina in 2017, 36 million pounds they paid for him. He was a real hot prospect, still only 26, but not getting hardly any game time at all. And as I said, attacking midfielder, can also play out wide as well. Very quick, good with his feet, good player. But as I said, just been in the doldrums at the moment at Juventus. Arsenal said to be interested in him. There's a lot of other teams interested in him as well in the Premier League, and he is said to be very interested in coming to the Premier League to play. So we'll have to see how that one pans out. But yet another player at Juventus that's surplus requirements, and I'm sure they're going to be looking to offload a lot of those players this summer. Juventus, we know that the coronavirus crisis has hit Italian clubs particularly hard. So let's see how that works out. And then there's Mohamed El Neni, another Arsenal player out on loan. The coronavirus pandemic seemingly hitting him hard as well because he hasn't been paid. Now, he's on loan at the moment at Besiktas over there in Turkey until the end of the season. He's been having a good time there. There was even talks a couple of weeks ago about how Besiktas would like to make his deal with them a permanent deal at the end of this season. But it turns out that he's owed about €1 million in wages. He hasn't been paid that, and he's threatening to not play for Besiktas again until he's paid. And listen, you can't blame him. I mean, you can't be playing week in, week out and not getting paid. Obviously, the coronavirus crisis over there is not helped, and but he's not happy with how he's being treated at the moment at the club, which casts into serious doubt whether he will stay with Besiktas come the end of the season. You'd have to say that seems very unlikely. Why would you stay if you're playing for a club that don't want to pay you, right? So looks like he'll be on his way back to Arsenal come the end of well, maybe even before that, if he refuses to play, and it'll be another player that Arsenal are either going to have to keep or send back out on loan again. So we'll have to keep an eye on that one. Let's get into your comments. By the way, anybody on Facebook, I know we have the super chats on YouTube. On Facebook as well, we've got the stars system activated. So if you want to use the stars system, you can do on Facebook, right? So just thought I'd mention that the stars system is available on Facebook. Right, let's get into some of the comments there. Classic says, Robbie, big up yourself in these tough times. To be honest, I would take anyone over Ozil, who has pace, power, and is skillful. Mesut is done. Claude says it's time to go. Obviously, we're getting linked with loads of midfielders. Lord's Official says, hi, Robbie. What are the chances of us getting the FA Cup this season, keeping in mind our good winning form and the following teams to compete? Also, what did you think about Arcadi's permanent PSG deal? With the FA Cup, we got a great chance of winning it. I mean, we've got Sheffield United in the next round, which won't be easy. Of course, you know, Sheffield United, well, they've been playing better than us this season and they're higher than us, but definitely a winnable game against Sheffield United. We played them twice, lost them 1-0 at their place, drew with them at our place in a game we should really have won, but both tough games. So we can beat Sheffield United and look to try and get into the FA Cup. And remember, the FA Cup would be a pathway into the Europa League. So there's that. And the Icardi's permanent deal to PSG, which they're trying to work out at the moment, is very interesting because I like the fact that Inter Milan are writing into that deal a clause that says he can't be sold back to Juventus. Right? I like that. I want to see Arsenal start doing those things, because we saw that with Fabregas, didn't we? Him ending up back at Chelsea. So maybe that's something for Arsenal to consider in the future. If, say, an Aubameyang went abroad, you write something in here that says he can't be sold back to United, Chelsea, Tottenham, something like that. It's very interesting that they're writing in that clause. Akash says, hey, Robbie, Bernardeschi is a class player who could replace Ozil. However, not sure if he would adapt to the Premier League. Well, he's got to be able to do that. Jabo says, totally forgot that we're still in the FA Cup. Laugh out loud. I know, because we've just been all focusing on, obviously, the Premier League. Mark says, taking Bernardeschi on loan is a good deal. That might be an idea. Loan deals is going to be right up there. Ashatouche says, hello, Robbie. What do you think of Arsenal physio Paulo Barreira leaving Arsenal? He did a good job helping Bellerin, Tierney, Rob Holding coming back from a big injury. What do you think? Yeah, I saw that news this morning that he is leaving Arsenal. Torreira actually sent a message to him saying, you know, good luck in the future. Thank you for all the stuff that you did. Obviously, I don't know a lot about the physio. They'll get another physio in, another top physio. So it's not like a player going. Obviously, he had a good relationship with these players, but if he's decided to leave for certain reasons, what can you do? Dejan says, don't go for him and stick with Emile Smith-Rowe. Let Arteta help the youth grow. We don't have the money to spend anyway. Coming you Gunners, big up from Canada. Let's get into this next one here. Oh, I've done that one. I've done that one. Rohan says, loan Ainsley Maitland-Niles, loan Holding, which will lower our wages and give him game time to come back fitter and better. Use the wage saved to renew Aubameyang and Saka's contract. Pineapple Fruit Dude says, whatever fans say about the Chelsea rejects, players like Cech and Luiz have been an improvement for Arsenal. So would be Willian. No, man, no. Cech, when Cech came in, he did all right, yeah? He got a lot of stick, but he was steady. But is that what you want? Just a steady keeper? A guy that's coming towards the end of his career and just coming... Yeah, I mean, he was always very professional and he was steady. But we should have been gone for a keeper like a Leno at that time. And, you know, David Luiz again is coming. He's done a decent job. Got to see how he finishes the season. But we should be going for those real top centre-backs. And why would we go and get Willian when we've already got players who can play in that position? I do not want to see Willian ending up at Arsenal. I really, really don't. It will send a really bad message for me. It is like we're just picking up rejects. That's how I feel about it. Best in the World one says, hey, Robbie, just for argument's sake, don't you think that fans in stadium would suit Arsenal? It's not like fans at home, much of a difference sometimes. We like the team need to do better. Our fans do need to do better, but the fans at the Emirates do make a massive difference, right? So, you know, I'm sorry, it benefits every club to have your fans there. You've only got to look at the stats that have been coming out of German Bundesliga football, where home advantage has literally gone. Normally, there's a massive percentage of teams that win their home games. That has dropped significantly since it's been behind closed doors. So it really doesn't benefit you. It really does benefit you when you have your home support. No matter how perceived the team is to have a quiet home support, playing at home in front of your own fans is a massive advantage. Mark says Bernardeschi is left-footed and Arteta would prefer him. Ambessa says Hector wants to leave because of the club's ambition. Well, listen, I haven't seen that him say that as a reason, but if that was the reason, I always look at it and say, some of these players, they need to look at it and say, well, what's your part in it? What's your part in the lack of ambition at the club? Do you show enough ambition? Do you leave it all out there on the pitch? You know, so everybody's got to start taking responsibility as a player for where Arsenal are, and not just say, well, the club's ambition. You know, you're a player there. What are you doing about it? Are you leaving everything on the pitch in every game? You know, if you were doing that, maybe we don't need to sign anybody. So I want to see players showing that. Arsenal Vlog saying, hey, Robbie, big up the channel. I personally think football fans for the FA Cup final should not return, because I think they should wait until there's a vaccine, please. Vaccine, because do you think City away will give us a chance? As I said, there's an advantage now. The advantage now, home advantage with fans, is gone out of the window. However, you are seeing that the stronger teams are prevailing. So it's still going to be really tough to go to City. On the football fans thing at Wembley, personally, I am not against that. I really want to get football fans back into the stadium. It has to be safe, though. I just want to reiterate that every time, that I think these are sensible measures. They're saying if the infection rate drops below 0.5, they could do this. And remember, that stadium can hold about 90,000 fans. They're only talking about putting 20,000 in there. But for me, these are steps towards normality, steps towards it. You get some fans back in, they're in the stadium, they're socially distanced in the stadium. I'm presuming they're going to do it. I mean, I'd heard from one of my contacts at Arsenal that they were talking about in the future a socially distanced stadium to get people back in. So maybe I'd be sat in my seat here, there'd be nobody in the next two seats next to me, and there'd be nobody 2 rows in front of me or a row in front of me. So that way I'd be 2 meters apart from everybody and we'd be in the stadium. They'd have to find a way of getting us into the stadium socially distanced. I presume we probably all have to wear masks, but if the infection rate is low, that means not a lot of people have got the coronavirus. Maybe it's something that could be done and definitely worth looking at. Chief Sosa says, in your opinion, Robbie, do Wolves have a better team, higher in the league, and 3-0 against Olympiacos is very close? Remember, that game against Olympiacos was played behind closed doors again, which meant that the advantage for Olympiacos, which I've witnessed with my own eyes with their crowd, which is absolutely mental, was gone. So that made it a lot easier for Wolves, that game. I think it would have been a different game had there been fans in the stadium. But if you used to ask me right now who was the better team, and I was to be 100% honest, you've got to say Wolves. They're higher than us in the league. And they've been more consistent this season. They have drawn a hell of a lot of games, Wolves, just like a bit like us. But at this moment in time, they are a better team, you know, being honest, than Arsenal. Shouldn't be, because I think, you know, we've got just as many talented players as them, but they are. And these teams are the teams that we need to catch up. If we're gonna get into top 4, top 5. Lex says, I think Hector should go. He's too injury prone, and we should replace him with Leicester's Pereira. That's easily said than done. That would be millions. Alexander McKay says, Robbie, how big would you say Celtic are? I'd say Celtic, right? This is going to be quite controversial to a lot of people. Is one of the biggest clubs in the world. When you talk about worldwide support, then what? Definitely, I've seen it. I've been all around, well, not all around, but I've been to many places around the world to watch football, and there's always a Celtic supporters club at every bar. You know, they're huge. If they were in the Premier League, they'd be right up there. It's just that obviously playing in Scotland, you know, a lot smaller league, a lot less interest from TV, but they still maintain that support throughout the world. So, no, they're a huge club. Celtic are a huge club. And just for balance, so are Rangers. So you don't get me in no trouble here, right? Alex Brown says, but Arsenal fans still banter Chelsea. Shouldn't it be the other way around? I'm not sure what he's on about there. Asher Touche says, hello, Robbie. It's good and safe for fans to watch football from their home or coming in big numbers and spreading the virus and stopping a football again? What do you think? Of course, at the moment, behind closed doors, is what is required, and I agree with it. You know, because it's not safe yet to bring big crowds into football. But we're talking about the FA Cup final. That could be in 2 months' time. Remember where we were with this virus 2 months ago. So you've got to look and start saying, if we continue to make strides against it, this is a possibility by the time we get to, you know, August, end of July, when that will be played. You know, it's possible to do it. If the infection rate, as they said, they're talking about if the infection rate drops below 0.5, possibility that we could then do this. So why not? Why not just, you know, I've had stick about this in the past, and I always maintain it, right? There's no harm in talking about these things and discussing them and talking about how do we get to that? How can we? As long as we take into account all the dangers, and as long as, if those dangers return, we then say, we can't do it right now. That can't be done. Then I think it's fine. But, you know, everything, you know, there's nothing wrong with considering these things. That's my opinion. I don't think there's nothing wrong with considering these things. Ishmael says, Don Robbie, will Saliba play in the remaining season? It would be insane to have him. They've already said he can't play. So he won't be playing until next season. Archie says, do you think that the Champions League and Europa League will return? I do. I don't know how they're going to do that, because obviously at the moment you've got the difficulties of quarantine. I think even with some of those tournaments, I was thinking to myself the other day, how are they going to do the qualifying rounds? Because remember, like the Europa League qualifying starts really early. So does the Champions League qualifying rounds. That starts really early. It's just not going to be able to do that this season. Remember, there's a lot of countries that have got quarantine measures in action. So you come to England, for instance, from abroad, come to Britain at the moment, you've got to go into quarantine for 2 weeks. So how would that work? You couldn't do it right now unless you played it all in a neutral venue or something. So those competitions are going to really struggle to get back on, but they may try and play the waiting game, see what the situation's like, maybe, I don't know, come September, October, and see if teams can travel. I don't know right now. You know what I mean? Nobody knows the current situation, but there's no doubt with the amount of money that are involved in those tournaments that they'll be looking to try and get those back on as well. Modip says the French league is cancelled, so how does it work? The French league is cancelled for this season, but obviously I'm sure they're talking about the Europa League and that for next season. And already PSG have already said that they will compete in the Champions League if it resumes. So they, you know, yeah, it will still happen if it resumes. Pineapple Fruit Dude said fans at the FA Cup are easier to do because they don't have to choose who is allowed in, season ticket holders, etc. There'd still be an element of that, though. Who would you give those tickets to? You know, there would still be an element of that. Arsenal Vlog says, Robbie, where will you be doing your interviews for the Manchester City game? Would you travel to Manchester by car and do social distance or stream? We will not be going to Manchester to do that. We've got plans that will be revealed soon. But we definitely will not be going to Manchester, and we definitely don't want fans turning up at the stadium, because then that defeats the whole object of what they're trying to do with keeping people behind closed doors. So we're going to be responsible as possible with this as well. Not as possible. We are going to be totally responsible when it comes to sticking to the whole rules of this whole coronavirus thing. And the last thing that we should be doing is telling people to turn up at the stadium, and we won't be. So we won't be at the stadium for the, you know, it's sad at the moment that we can't do that, but it is what it is. It's the same for football fans. They can't go to games. I mean, we're fans. We can't go at the moment. We're going to have to watch it from home or from wherever, but we will not be at the game. which is going to be horrible. The Chase says, Robbie, have you ever rated Luiz at Arsenal? And do you care for keeping him for another season? I think his start of the season was very, very shaky. Very, very shaky. But since Arteta's come in, he's played well. He's been, he's particularly, I've been impressed with the way he's brought the ball out from the back, his passing range. He's really brought something to the team. If he continues that on from now till the end of the season, considering the lack of money that Arsenal are going to have to go into the transfer market, then I would definitely keep him for another season if we could negotiate something on his wages. If we can't negotiate anything on his wages, then for me, I understand where Arsenal are coming from on this one. I really do. It's on £120,000 a week. They're asking people to take pay cuts and stuff like that. And it just would be too expensive for one more season. Maybe go and use that money to get somebody else in on loan. That's how I'm looking at it. But certainly, if he can continue on his form, it'd be great. I'm going to do the last couple here. Let me do this guy. Andy Gouda says, not worth asking questions on Facebook. They never get answered. Come on, Andy, man. Of course we answer questions on Facebook. And what are you asking? You've got to come with a question, bro. But big up Andy Guna. Yeah, big up Andy Guna. Enough respect to you, mate. Last one we're going to do. This gentleman says, do you really think Arsenal can get into the top 5 this season? Be realistic. The answer is yes. It all depends on how we return. If we can return back and we're fit and we hit the ground running straight away, I'll tell you what, if we was to beat City, that's the sort of thing that could give us so much momentum. And really, because we've been on a good run. We, last 5 games, drawn 2, won our last 3 games. So if we could beat City, and then the next game after that, Brighton away, get on a bit of a run. Why not? There's some tough games to come. We've got to play Liverpool, but we don't know what sort of Liverpool we're going to play. Is it going to be a Liverpool that more than likely have already won the title? Will they rest some of their players? I was talking to Mark Goldbridge about this last night. Will they look at it and say, we've won the league, rest some of the players now and save them? I mean, they're already not 100% fit. Save some of those players until next season. And then, obviously we've got Tottenham. That's going to be tough. Harry Kane and Son are back. We've got Wolves to play. We've got Leicester to play. We've even got some of the teams down the bottom that are fighting for their lives. Like I said, like Brighton, like Norwich, like Watford, Villa. So, but they're all winnable games for Arsenal, right? And I really think Arsenal, it's about getting on a run, getting some momentum going. If we can do that, top 5 is definitely there up for grabs. And it should, the fact that we're going to have to go to some of these stadiums and there's going to be no crowd in there, that might favour Arsenal against some of the lesser teams. So let's see how it works out. But football's coming back. That's one of the best things, at least as long as it's safe. Thanks for watching the show. Don't forget, I'm going to be back with the Q&A tonight from 8 o'clock. So get your questions ready for that. I'll be answering anything.